We move on to politics. Politics newspaper for this day talks of road projects. The vice president of the African Development Bank congratulates the execution of the different road projects that the African Development Bank has embarked on all across Cameroon. You can find more following her visit to the Star Building, where she met with the Prime Minister, Head of Government, Chief Dr. Joseph John Gute. Boxing, the paper report on selection process very soon the ordeal will come to an end. And Gondo 2024 to 2026 is the paper report of the new phases of the organization of the Ngondo Festival for the people from Douala area. We take you to the next paper for this morning. We make a stop over with this other publication, the satiric newspaper of Lepopoli. Lepopoli for this morning says a 2D, the position that lost its occupant. You can find more on that set paper for today on the satiric newspaper of Le Populi. La Voix des Jeunes for this morning talks of the universal health coverage phase 1. A paper reports on the adhesion of the population of Cameroon towards the massive registration on the universal health coverage that was initiated by the President of the Republic, President Paul Biya. And former 10 for this morning talks of Yaoundé 1 Council. The excesses of municipal police led to the death of 2 persons in a 2D neighborhood in Yaoundé. You can find more on that paper of Info Matin for this day, and you can read the entirety on page 3 on Info Matin for this morning. Cameroon Business Today of Marie Claire Nana to report on the transformation of the cotton sector. The paper reports on the local techniques. Guide to read more on that said paper for today. Access to financing for enterprises. The paper reports on crucial role of capital markets. Get to read more on page 13 to page 17 on Cameroon Business Today. Online training. The paper says affordable cost compared to on-campus education. Agriculture, energy, and monetary system. The paper reports on the challenges in the economy and what awaits the new leadership or new president of the Senegalese Republic of West Africa. Get to read more on that said paper of Cameroon Business Today. From Cameroon Business Today, we now move on to Le Chapeau. Le Chapeau of Carol Tamba for this morning have as lead story. Phase 1 of the universal health coverage. The paper reports on the significant advances. Get to read more on the significant advancement of the universal health coverage phase 1 in the Republic, as Carol Tamba tells us more on page 6 to 7 on that said paper for this morning. We move on to next door Nigeria with the Nigerian tabloid. We start with the National Print of Nigeria, Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune for this day says Kano High Court affirms Ganjoje's suspension in that said paper after hours of drama over arrest beat. EFCC says Yaya Bello will be arraigned today. And we move on to train 8 Nigerian NLG expansion threatened by alleged contract breaches. You can find details on that Nigerian Tribune for this day. From Nigerian Tribune, we take you to Cameroon Tribune now. The National Bilingual Daily from Cameroon says refugees in the nation. The paper talks of the need to make refugees situation look more better. You can find more on Cameroon Tribune for this day. And that's a Cameroon Tribune. Cameroon Investment Forum 4th edition ongoing, and MTN Elite 1 Championship. This says we await the champions. We move on to Cameroon Research Institute for Development evaluating growing cooperation. You can find more on the ear section on that set paper on page 3. Away from Cameroon Tribune, we take you to the next publication for today. The Guardian Post of Christian Gar for this day says at 4th Cameroon Investment Forum, Investment Promotion Agency marketing countries' potentials to investors. You can find details on that story from Douala on the front page of the Guardian Post for this day. And I said the Guardian Post, it talks of after Douala Beto Abafusam, Konak takes anti-corruption clinic to Ebolowa in the South region. We'll move on to the bottom page story of that said paper. Yaoundé, irate crowds barricades roads as truck crushes biker passenger fleeing from municipal police agent. And CBC constitutional amendment saga, Christians confesses trickle to drag executive president to court. Get to read more on page 7 on that story from the Guardian Post for this day. From the Guardian Post, let's take you to Mitasion from Douala. The paper report on Yaoundé One Council area high tension following the killing or the death of a biker and his passenger who were crushed to death by a heavy duty truck as they were fleeing from the municipal police agents in Funzi over there in the locality of the neighborhood of Yaoundé. And we move on to the school year. The paper reports on how the final term for secondary school students and primary school pupils are going on hitch-free all across the nation. Cameroon, the paper says, simple the 60th anniversary. You can find more on that said paper for today. Sorry, it says the cement factory known as Siku. You can find more on that said paper for this morning. Emergence Quotidian for this day talks of the electoral registration. It says mobilization all across the nation for Cameroonians to put their names on the electoral register of Elecam. Cocoa sector 2 billion CFA francs to be distributed to some outstanding farmers as a result of good cocoa production in the country. And we take you to humanitarian aid. The paper says the risks of some 2.3 million persons in Cameroon as a result of humanitarian threat. And get with details on page 4 on that publication for this day. The Fiactual, the economic newspaper for today, says made in Cameroon. It talks of when the state remobilizes. You can find more on that set paper of the Fiactual for this day. Cam Water announced this call from Paris. Get to read more on that set paper. MTN Cameroon in partnership with the Douala City Council. You can find details on this partnership agreement between MTN Cameroon and the Douala City Council headed by Dr. Roger Mbassa Ntine. We move on to remuneration at the Central Bank of Central African States, known in French as BEAC. It says BEAC opposes the increase of salaries of some top officials of the banking institution of the Central Bank of CEMAC. Get to read more on that said publication for this day. Away from that, let's take you now to the next paper. I think that it should be the Horizon. The Horizon for this morning have as late story fundraising wars of Cameroon startup funders. Nkafu Policy Institute contemplate startup fund. You can find more on that said paper for this day. And Jikwa, after 7 years on, Maiden Cultural Festival rekindles hope as villages unite and lighting up Fako 1,000 solar lamps arrive in Boya. Enhancing transparency in Cameroon polls, activists recommend presence of priests, pastors, and most Islamic leaders in each electoral unit of elections that will be coming up next year, 2025. After crushing to death civilians in Yaoundé, Fundi's senior divisional officer bans activity of municipal police in the city of Yaoundé. Cameroonian entrepreneur secures global citizen scholarship. You can find details on that story for this day. We move on to something else. This time around, we'll be taking you to Le Messager. Le Messager of late Pius Njaweh for this day says Yaoundé One Council the death of 2 persons at the gate of a Tudi. Get to read more on that sad incident that took place yesterday in the nation's political capital city of Yaoundé. In a said paper, Fika Foods, the paper report on the affair of Yassa Soleil. You can find more on that said paper for today. The lecture based in education, the last on the list. You can find more on that said paper for this morning of Le Messager. From Le Messager, let's take you now to visit the Nigerian tabloid for this morning. We kickstart with the first Nigerian tabloid, that is Vanguard. Vanguard talks of Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN) not using reserve to defend naira, according to Cardoso. And in that said publication, those threatening Nigeria's sovereignty have price to pay, and according to what Tinubu said yesterday. And in that said publication, Yoruba Nation agitators, Oyo government demolishes Onitiri Obiola's residence, and Ganduje kicks as Kano court affirms his suspension. Away from the Vanguard newspaper, we move on to the Matrix, another Nigerian tabloid for this day. It says Atiku Wike finally meets at PDP National Caucus meeting ahead of NEC meeting today in the city of Abuja. Yaya Bello, former governor of Kogi State in north central Nigeria, alleged is stealing 80 billion naira theft case. Get to read more on that said paper. IMF envisions Nigeria's inflation dropping to 26.3% before next year. National grid collapses. Obi urges federal government to set up tax to enforce address recruiting evidences, according to the bottom page story of the Matrix newspaper for this day. From the Matrix, we move on to first news. First news talks of EFCC siege. A shootout as Kogi Governor Sumogo's Yaya Bello out of Abuja's residence. Get to read more on that said paper. Naira abuse. Court grants Kubana chief priest a bill of 10 million naira, seizes his international passport, and Cardoso links deplementing reserve to debt repayments. And we move on to Erufai props. We won't be intimidated by your threats, Kaduna speaker tells ex-governor son. And bandits marching Kaduna's resident into forest. You can find details on that set story on and others from that publication of First News for this day. From First News, we take you to New Telegraph, another Nigerian tabloid from Abuja. Talks of court grant order suspending Gandojes as APC national chairman. You get to read details on page 2, 3, and 4. We move on to CBN Nigeria. That is, the Nigeria Central Bank didn't use reserve to defend Naira, according to Cardoso. EFCC versus Bello drama as Kogi Abuja court issue conflicting orders. We move away from that paper to something else with leadership. Leadership newspaper says APC PDP crisis. Gandoje battles for survivor. Gamagog knows fate today. Electricity tariff, 65% of private businesses risks shutting down, according to this statement from Nigeria. It's not fair for our intention to defend the naira, according to Central Bank of Nigeria (CBN). Away from that, we move on to something else. This time around, we'll be taking you now to sports with Sporting Sun. Sporting Sun for this day says Nigerian Football Federation (NFCC) decides on new Super Eagles coach today. And that's a publication. Sancho gives countdown for Manchester United return, and in that said publication, Cole Palmer missing out on huge Chelsea goal bonus. And we move on we take you to this other story that says Arsenal ends additional 2 million British pounds windfall from Leno's sale. You can find more on that said publication. And Juventus join race to sign Didi in this summer transfer window in the European Football League. We move on to something else with the next paper. Now we take you now to Business Day. Business Day for this day says Naira again put spotlight on petrodollar inflow, and in that said publication, 7 out of 10 businesses risk closure over electricity tariff hike, and you can find details on that said paper. Federal government FG walls foreign investors for infrastructure manufacturing. You can find details on the bottom page story on Business Day for this morning. From that tabloid, we move on to Cameroonian newspaper with Le Point. Le Point for this day talks of the cacophony. You can find more on that said publication. Or the slip off, it says a slip off, you can find details on that said paper of the state of Cameroon between ENU and other electricity stakeholders. It titles that as a slip off. Ministry of Sport and Physical Education and Fika-Foot saga continue. The paper report on distraction. Get to read more on that said paper. MTN Cameroon, Orange Cameroon, and the Ministry of Post and Telecommunication. It says the talk of war. Get to read more on that talk of war on bottom page story of Le Point on page 6 for this day. From Le Point, we take you now to the next paper, the next Cameroonian tabloid. I think we should be moving on to We should be moving on to this other Cameroonian paper for today. That should be Mitasiong. Mitasiong reports on the high tension in the Yaoundé One Council area, according to Mitasiong newspaper, following the standoff between bike riders, commercial motorbike riders in the neighborhood of Ituri, following the crushing of a motorbike rider and his passenger to death by heavy duty trucks as a result of them being escaping from the escapees of the municipal police in Yaoundé. We move on to this other story. I beg your pardon on that interruption. That is Radio Police. Radio Police report on the agricultural chambers and that of fishery, animal husbandry, and forest, who comes out with this engagement to award the president of that prestigious institution, Martin Paul Minju, nominee with despite a lot of jealousy, according to the Paul's paper of Reality Police for this day. From Reality Police, we revisit our international tabloid. We start with The Guardian. The Guardian for this day says Brexit blame as UK drugs shortages put lives at risk. And in that said paper, a year and a half rain in 24 hours, Dubai mops up after desert deluge, as the city of Dubai is now heavily inundated following heavy downpours that occurred some days ago in the city of Dubai. That is what the Guardian is telling us for this day. Daily Mail for this morning reports on tourist trial, labor on defense, tax, immigration, even Brexit. Get with details on that said publication for today. Goodbye Britain. Harry register America as his official home. And Daily Express for today, Lords defy will of the people over Rwanda bill again. In that said publication, it's an honor for Paul Holly to get royal handshake and seek note Britain to get even worse, to get rid more. That's a paper. I for this morning report Israel will defy plea for restraint and strike Iran. That is what David Cameron, former British Prime Minister, revealed. And in that said paper, mortgage blows as striking inflation makes summer interest rate cuts less likely. We move on to Daily Telegraph for this day. Talks of Ryanair faces new homes tax question. And that's a paper. The Scottish primary school will have people as LGBT champions, and former post office chairman was a racist. You can find details on that said paper for today. How the left weapon the law. You can find more on the interference of the law by the West weapon. And Financial Times, the financial newspaper for this day, reports on IMF debt warning raises double over Sunak bid to axe national insurance, and desert storm freak floods triple the city of Dubai in the United Arab Emirates. Pablo Escobar brother cannot trademark late drug lord's name. EU court rules. Get read more on the brother of the late Lord drug was notorious in the world in the 80s and 90s, Pablo Escobar. We move away from the Pablo Escobar story to visit Daily Star for this day. Daily Star for this day report on escape big cats do walk among us. And if you see one, don't run. You can find more on that story from Daily Star for today. Happy Harry, according to that paper. We move away to this other story that says that he is just a very quiet. Daily Mirror is the last newspaper for this morning, in which we'll be visiting for today. It talks of Shonal's kidnapper death, and European Champions League Euro agony following the exit of Manchester City by Real Madrid over there during the penalty shootout of last night's games. And we move on to Shameless to the very end. You can find details on that set paper. I think the last paper should be the sun. The sun is our last paper before we pack our bags out of the studio for this Thursday's edition of the program. We make a stopover with the sun. The sun reports on Royal Fires, his new country. You can find more on that said paper for today. American Idol Harry. You can find details on that said paper. And he went for that to say Prince is officially US resident. We move on to Ghana out of the European Champions League after their defeat by Bayern Munich last night over there in the Champions League in a 1-0 victory game that was recorded over there in Europe. We move away from that football story. He says now he's cut all ties with Britain, making reference to the British Royal Prince Harry. With that story from Prince Harry on the Sun newspaper for this morning, viewers, this is what we draw the curtains of today's edition of the program. Press brief of Thursday, the 18th of April 2024. We urge you to stay tuned in the company of High Television as more interesting programs are coming your way. For me and the crew, we'll be coming with you with the weekend edition tomorrow, hopefully with a reviewer for the second part to trailers for that tomorrow's edition. Stay tuned from on High Television as more interesting programs are coming your way. Good day.